There was a time when every man walking this earth carried knowledge in his hands that no book had given him. He learned it from the man before him, who learned it from the man before that, going back further than anyone alive can name. None of it required a school. None required a certification. It required proximity to someone who already knew and the willingness to watch and then do. Most of that knowledge is gone now, not lost in the sense that it cannot be recovered. Lost in the sense that the men who held it died before anyone thought to ask. Number 1 is the skill that made every other skill on this list possible. Let us get into it. Number 15. Reading weather without a forecast. A man standing in a field in 1920 did not check his phone to decide whether to cut hay. He looked at the sky, the color of the sunrise, the shape of clouds building to the southwest, the direction the wind was pulling the treetops, the smell of the air before rain, the behavior of the cattle. These were not superstitions. They were a reading system refined over centuries by men whose lives and harvests depended on getting it right. A ring around the moon meant moisture high in the atmosphere and rain within 24 hours. Towering cumulus clouds in early afternoon meant a thunderstorm by 3. A steady south wind shifting to the northwest meant clearing behind a front. Every observation has a meteorological explanation. The men who read them had no meteorology. They had results. The modern man checks a radar app. The app is right 80% of the time and gives him no understanding of why. The man who read the sky understood everything above his head. Number 14, repairing everything he owned. The default mode of every man before 1970 was fix it, not replace it. The shoe with a worn heel got a new heel tacked on in the garage. The shirt with a torn elbow got a patch. The cast iron skillet with a hairline crack got brazed with silver solder. The fence post rotted at ground level got cut square and sister spliced. A man who repaired what he owned understood what he owned. He knew how it was built, where it was weak, and how to make it last another 20 years. The modern man understands almost nothing he owns because he has never been inside it. Replacement is a reasonable solution to a broken object. It is a terrible education. Number 13, reading animal tracks. Every man who hunted, farmed, or lived near open land before the middle of the 20th century could read the ground the way a modern man reads a street sign. A deer trail showed by the depth of the print whether the animal was running or walking, and by the spread of the toes whether it was a doe or a buck in rut. A raccoon track at the edge of a creek told a man whether the animal had been there at dawn or midnight by the moisture still in the impression. A predator's trail through snow told a story of stalking and pursuit in the patterns between the strides. This was not a hobby. On a farm, it told a man what was raiding his henhouse. On a hunt, it told him where his quarry had bedded and which direction it moved at first light. The man who could read tracks was a man who could feed his family in any season. The man who could not was dependent on luck. Number 12, building a fire without modern starters. Tinder first, the driest material available, dead grass, shredded bark, a bird's abandoned nest. Then kindling, thumb-sized sticks, no longer than a forearm laid in a structure that let the air move through. Then fuel, split wood placed to feed without smothering. The match went to the tinder, not the wood. One match. The skill was in the preparation, not the lighting. A man who built fires regularly in 1945 understood combustion from the ground up. He understood that fire needs three things: heat, fuel, and oxygen, and that managing all three was the work. Too much fuel too soon, and the fire smothered. Too little tinder, and the match went out before anything caught. The architecture of the fire determined whether it lasted 3 hours or 30 minutes. The campfire the modern man builds with a bag of store-bought starter and a long match is not a fire he built. It is a product he activated. Number 11, basic blacksmithing. Every farm community before 1930 had a blacksmith. By 1950, most farms still had a coal forge with a hand crank blower, a 200-pound anvil, a set of hammers and tongs. The man who ran it could straighten a bent plow point, forge a hook, a hinge, or a bracket from bar stock, and heat and bend a wagon tire back into round after a wheel had been sprung on a rock. The knowledge required was temperature reading by eye. Yellow was too hot for anything delicate. Orange was forging temperature for mild steel. Cherry red was drawing and bending. Black heat was invisible and burned skin the same as orange. A man who had worked a forge for 10 years carried that color knowledge in his memory and his scars. The propane torch replaced the forge for most small repairs. The torch is faster and requires no coal. It also delivers no understanding of iron or what steel wants to do under a hammer. The blacksmith knew his material. The torch user heats and hopes. Number 10, rope making and knot tying. Before synthetic cordage, a man who needed rope made it. Grass, fiber stripped from plant stalks, twisted bark, raw hemp. 3 strands twisted against each other in alternating directions produced a rope that held under load. The tension in each twist locked against the others, and the rope grew tighter as it was pulled rather than looser. This was rope making understood from physics, not from a manual. The knots that went with that rope were a vocabulary. The bowline made a fixed loop that would not slip under any load. The clove hitch tied a boat to a dock in 10 seconds flat. The sheet bend joined 2 ropes of different thickness. The trucker's hitch created mechanical advantage to cinch a load tight enough that nothing moved on a 3-day drive over unpaved road. By 2025, the average American man can tie 1 knot with confidence. The rest have disappeared from common knowledge entirely. Number 9, woodworking. Not hobbyist woodworking, with a router table and a pocket hole jig. Hand tool woodworking, a sharp handsaw, a well-set plane, a mallet, and a set of chisels. The ability to take rough sawn lumber and make from it something square, joined, and solid without a single piece of hardware if the joinery was correct. A mortise and tenon joint cut by hand and fitted properly does not need a screw. The mechanical interlock of the wood holds under racking forces that would pull a screw joint apart in a season. Powered tools do the same work faster. The man who uses only powered tools loses the feedback that hand tools provide. The handsaw tells you when it is binding. The hand plane tells you when the grain is reversing. A router bit tells you nothing. It just cuts. Number 8. Butchering meat. The American man in 1945 who raised livestock knew how to kill, clean, and break down that animal from whole carcass to finished cuts. Nothing was wasted. The organs were eaten or rendered. The bones were boiled for stock. The hide was tanned. The fat was rendered for cooking. A man who had butchered his own hog understood the anatomy of the animal and the quality of meat from each position in relation to how hard that muscle worked. He bought the rib roast over the chuck because he knew what the chuck did for a living. The modern man points at a plastic package and has never seen what is inside the animal it came from. Number 7. Navigating without maps. Before the road map and well before the GPS, a man moved through landscape by reading it. The sun told him east and west. The moss on the north face of trees told him his cardinal directions in overcast. The drainage of streams told him which way the land fell, and therefore which way he was moving relative to higher ground. Stars at night gave him north by Polaris, and approximate time by the rotation of the constellations around it. A man traveling on foot or horseback through unfamiliar country could maintain direction across 50 miles of terrain without a single road sign by reading what the land was telling him constantly. He arrived not because he had a device, but because he understood his environment well enough to let it guide him. Number 6. Leatherworking. Saddles, harnesses, boots, belts, holsters, knife sheaths. Every leather item a man used was made and maintained by someone who knew leather. Not the tanning, which required a specialized trade, but the cutting, stitching, riveting, and conditioning that kept the finished leather functional for decades. A man who knew leather could resole his own work boots with a piece of vegetable tanned sole leather and a curved needle. He could replace a broken harness strap before it cost him a horse. He could stitch a torn saddle skirt before it opened into a dangerous seat. The leather awl, the saddle stitch, the edge beveler. Familiar as a kitchen knife. The work required patience and the right angle. Nothing that could not be learned in an afternoon from someone willing to show it. Number 5. Maintaining farm equipment. A farmer in 1950 maintained his own machinery because there was no alternative. The John Deere dealer was 40 miles away, and the planting season waited for no service appointment. He changed his own oil, set his own points, adjusted his own cultivator shanks, welded his own broken hitches, and rebuilt his own carburetor from a kit that cost $4 at the co-op. The knowledge was systemic. He understood what each system on the tractor did and which failure affected which output. When the engine ran rough under load, he knew to check the governor linkage before he touched the carburetor. Modern farm equipment has computers that tell a dealer's laptop what is wrong. The farmer no longer needs to know. He also no longer does. The knowledge went with the requirement. Number 4. Handwriting and penmanship. A man's handwriting in 1950 was a signature not just of his name, but of his character and education. Copperplate script and Spencerian hand were taught in American schools as primary skills, not aesthetic electives. A business letter written in a clear, consistent hand conveyed competence before a word was read. The man who wrote well had trained his hand over thousands of hours of deliberate practice. The act of writing slowly and carefully reinforced thinking slowly and carefully. The letter that took 20 minutes to compose by hand said only what was necessary and said it once. Less than 15% of American men under 40 write in cursive today. Handwriting has been reclassified from a basic skill to a specialty. The men who taught it called it the minimum standard. Number 3. Growing and preserving food. A kitchen garden in 1945 was not a hobby. It was a food supply. The man and his wife planted in April, cultivated through summer, and put up in August and September. Canning, smoking, pickling, root cellaring, and drying were not nostalgic crafts. They were the system that kept the family fed through winter, without a grocery store run every 3 days. A man who grew and preserved his own food understood seasons, soil, moisture, and the biology of spoilage at a level that no amount of reading replicated. He knew which varieties stored longest in a root cellar and which had to be eaten fresh. He knew the salt concentration required to ferment without rotting. He knew the temperature at which botulism thrived and the processing time required to destroy it safely. The modern man buys canned goods and does not know what is in them beyond the label. The man of 1945 knew what was in his because he had grown and put it up himself. Number 2. Horse handling. For most of human history, the horse was the primary source of transportation, draft power, and agricultural labor. A man who could not handle a horse could not farm effectively, travel reliably, or haul anything heavier than he could carry. Horse handling was not one skill, but a system. Harnessing and hitching. Reading the animal's body language for fear, pain, and resistance. Knowing when to push and when to wait. Treating a stone bruise or a bout of colic without a veterinarian on call. The last generation of American men who handled horses as a matter of daily necessity died in the 1970s. The tractor replaced the horse. The tractor does not require patience, observation, or relationship. The man who drove only a tractor was a more efficient farmer and a less complete one. Number 1. Building things from scratch. Not assembling, not renovating. Building. Starting with raw material, wood, stone, iron, clay, and producing from it a structure that had not existed before. A fence, a barn, a cabin, a smokehouse, a well house, a root cellar. Designed in the head, laid out on the ground with stakes and string, built without blueprints by men who understood structural logic from experience rather than engineering school. The man who built his own barn knew where the load traveled through the structure because he had cut and set every timber himself. He knew which joints were under compression and which were in tension. He knew where he could cut a corner and where he absolutely could not. That knowledge was not transferable by description. It came from building, failing in small ways, correcting, and building again until the structure in the mind matched the structure in the field. 15 skills. None of them required genius. None required money. All of them required a man willing to do the work long enough to understand it from the inside. The chain broke quietly between 1965 and 1995. The sons watched television while the fathers worked. The grandfathers died with the knowledge still in their hands. The skills did not go because they stopped working. They went because the silence between generations grew too wide to cross.